Hello everyone, this is the real Black Otaku. It is a belief of mine that the characters are the backbone of any good story. If you don't care for the characters, then odds are you won't give a shit about anything else that's presented within, regardless of how good it might be. And this doesn't just apply to anime. Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog, Forrest Gump, Ruby, Scrubs. These are some of my favorite shows or movies with various appeals, but all of which have characters of which I was able to get behind for one reason or another. With that in mind, I present to you my top 10 favorite character casts in anime. As the previous paragraph would imply, this is a list of anime series which have character casts which enhance my enjoyment of the series and, in some cases, practically make their series. Now, the main criteria for this is, well, beyond just having entertaining characters, is that I am taking the entire cast into consideration. Mains, secondaries, sides, and even villains if they're present. This means that even if the show has one amazing character, if the rest of the cast is lackluster, it won't be considered for the list. That's exactly why neither Monica Magica nor Elfenlied will be on this list, despite my thoughts and feelings towards Homura and Lucy. Before I get started on the actual list, I'd like to give a quick rundown of the honorable mentions. Today's honorable mentions are Erased, Halo Legends, Hetalia, Kill la Kill, and Welcome to the NHK. It is a fairly common occurrence in anime for one or more characters to die at one point or another. But how about we kill off every single character multiple times over the course of the series in some of the most horrific fashions imaginable? Well, it can only be my number 10 pick, Higurashi. The main appeal I see to these characters is that there are more to them than at first seen. How the events of the story bring out the side to these characters that we did not know that they had. Also, for this, I'm going to have to go into some spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen Higurashi up to this point in the video, trust me, you're better off like that. Rena might seem really happy and have a thing for cute things, but she has some violent tendencies. Totsuko might be an energetic prankster with one of anime's most annoying laughs, which is actually saying a lot, but she has a less than ideal family situation. And there's my personal favorite, Rika, who is a adorable little ball of but she has suffered so much over the course of the series and even beyond. I could also go into characters like Hanyu or the Sonozaki twins, but I'd be here all day. However, I'd be damned if I did not mention Mio Takano. Not only was the fact that she was the main villain hidden pretty well, but she's also had her fair share of hardships and has a fairly reasonable motivation for doing some of the horrible things that she has done. Another thing that I've loved about these characters, and more specifically towards the main cast, is the sense of friendship and camaraderie among them, which is actually going to be a recurring theme in this list, but we'll get to them when we get to them. No matter what happens, they would always be there for one another to help out however they can. I really don't have any complaints about these characters. But the reason that they're only at number 10 is because I thought there were 9 series that I felt deserved higher spots on the list. When you think of the greatest anime ever, what title do you think of? Berserk? You haven't seen that one yet. Neon Genesis Evangelion? I actually considered including that on this list, but in the end it didn't even make the cut for honorable mentions. Well, this next entry isn't one that I give the title of greatest anime ever. It is a very popular choice for many people, or at least one of its anime adaptations anyway. Number 9 is Fullmetal Alchemist, both the original 2003 adaptation and the Brotherhood remake. Now, given the huge popularity of FMA, there really isn't much that I need to say. It had a memorable supporting cast, a great ensemble of villains, and let's not forget the Elric brothers, who are without a doubt one of, if not the best pair of siblings in anime, which is actually quite the accomplishment. While there's plenty worth praising, it only makes number 9, primarily because the characters overall were done differently between the two adaptations. There are some characters who are done better in the original adaptation than they were in Brotherhood. There are some that are done better in Brotherhood than they were in the original. And then there are a plethora of other characters who were only in one adaptation, but not the other. I know I didn't spend very much time on this entry, but there really isn't much more that needs to be said. Moving on. I've already stated the characters are the most important part of any given story, and that couldn't be any truer for a romance anime. And this also applies to the titles that most people associate with the romance genre, mainly Clannad, Toradora, and A Tale of Memories. Of these three, one will be featured later on the list, one didn't even make the list at all, and the third is right here at number 8. And that is Toradora. There really isn't much to be said about the main cast beyond being amazing. Everyone has their own distinct personality, is entertaining in their own way, and contributes to the awkwardly shaped love pentagon very well. For the dramatic rom-com that this is, I'd call this a near-perfect main cast. However, Toradora's cast does have one major flaw: its side characters. I'll admit they were entertaining and helped keep things fresh, but they really do not do much for how much screen time that they get. Well, except for maybe Yasuko. They used her well. Well, this is enough to keep Toradora out of the running for a top spot. The main cast was able to carry it at least this far. This next series is a more obscure one, which is a little disappointing for me considering how often it's shown up on my top 10s. Number 7 is Gunslinger Girl. I think the most logical place to start would be with the main girls. The first and most obvious thing to point out first would be what they have become. They're essentially young children who are taken from their previous lives by a government program, and through training and a series of mental and physical alterations become very efficient killing machines and is used to fight against rebellious threats against the government. Honestly, that sounds a little familiar, but not gonna get into that one. Despite all of that, they do still more or less act like girls their own age. They are still, at their core, human, despite what has been done to their minds and bodies. The main characters aren't the only ones who get some great character building. Much of the supporting cast gets some good development as well. Just take a look at the girls' handlers. Not only do we get a wide variety of interactions between the various Fratello, but the handlers themselves do get some good screen time and development. They even give some great development to the villains. That is, if we would even call them villains to begin with. At first they just seem like a band of terrorists fighting against the government, but the writers take the time to flesh out their characters, giving them actual motivations. In the end, Gunslinger Girl had a lot going for it, but it just did not have enough to get it any higher. Absolutely nothing against it, it just could not compete with the entries to come. It is an observation of mine that choosing and arguing over best girl is about half the fun of most harems, or just any series with a large female cast for that matter. And that would also explain the popularity of relatively recent shows like Nisekoi or Masaru Musume. Now usually it's pretty easy for me to choose who is best girl, sometimes because she is literally the only good choice. But occasionally a harem comes along where I have a hard time choosing between two girls to say who is the best. Though in the end, I do eventually make a choice. This next entry is a little special because I still just cannot decide who is truly best. Number 6 is Clannad. To bring up the dilemma that I mentioned in the introduction to this entry, I have a hard time choosing not between 2, but 3 girls. For a long time, I've actually said that Katomi was the best girl of Clannad. Though after some thought, and after reading a little bit of the original visual novel, both Kyo and Tomoyo have gone up there, and now I just cannot choose between the 3 of them. Now that's out of the way, let's get to the real important stuff, like the character cast as a whole. I'm going to say this right now, that Clannad is my favorite character cast from a harem anime, which will be a little strange considering what I have numbers 3 and 4, but I don't consider either of them to be harems anyway. Now, unlike most harems that have at least one unlikable love interest, Clannad really doesn't have one like that. Yeah, well, yes, I really don't care for Fuko that much, but I still enjoy the screen time that she had. Tomoya also made for a great male lead, with a personality that not only worked well for the story, but also makes him stand out from other harem leads. Clannad also had a very solid supporting cast, with special mentions going to Nagisa's parents and Tsunohara, each of whom bring their own brand of comic relief, but also has some very well done drama involving their characters. Beyond the individual characters, one of the strongest points of Clannad is the value they put on friendship. It's not quite at the level of the power of friendship like another entry on this list is infamous for, but it's still a fairly strong theme. They're presented in a way where they genuinely feel like friends. They help and support each other, they stand up for one another, they may get into fights, but they make up for it when everything is said and done. Last, and most importantly, is just after story as a whole. Not only did it drop the harem aspect in the previous season in order to focus more on Tomoya and Nagisa, but it was able to provide some great development for several characters, especially Tomoya. Despite all that, Clannad just misses out of the top 5. You know what this list needs? Some comedy. Well, pretty much every entry on this list has comedy in varying degrees, but I want to talk about what I consider to be a straight comedy, and one of the best examples of which, if you ask me. Number 5 is Baka and Test. Where do I start with this cast? There are just so many characters worth mentioning, but just so little time. So let's just do a quick rundown. We have the lovable dumbass who, for once, is not voiced by Greg Ayres, the complete pervert who actually is, the charismatic leader, the abusive girlfriend of said charismatic leader, the insecure tsundere, the clumsy genius girl, and let's not forget about the undeniable best girl.
Isn't Hideyoshi a guy?
I'd still tap that. And that is just the main cast. There are numerous side characters with their own personalities and quirks that make them memorable in their own way. My personal favorite is going to Akihisa's elder sister Akira, and a teacher referred to simply as Iron Man. Well, yes, their personalities are a little more than running gags, but that's what makes them work. And that's what makes Baka and Test's comedy work. Even though I love Baka and Test and its characters, I just could not put it any higher on this list because I just preferred some of the more serious entries. But it still made number 5, so that's something. People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it is more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. Now what does this totally obscure reference have to do with this next entry? It is simple. Time travel. Now, while there are several anime out there that involve time travel in varying degrees, a few of which actually made this list, there is only one that's truly synonymous with time travel. Number 4 is Steins Gate. But first things first, Okabe is fucking hilarious, and Kurusu balances him out very well. Even Daru and Mayuri actually helped bring the main cast together, as well as being rather good on their own. Everyone made the show's a slower first half, but really fun to watch, and once shit hit the fan, and they were able to react accordingly, especially Okabe. However, I do have one major issue with Steins Gate's characters. Very similar to Toradora, Steins Gate had a very weak supporting cast. At least this time, I actually remember their names. Well, for the most part at least. And they do have defining character traits and contribute quite a bit to the overarching story. While this was enough to keep it all running for a top spot, it was at least able to get this high up. One of the things that I love about Key is just how well they do their characters. Well, yes, the characters for Air and Charlotte were pretty but the others were pretty good. Clannad's already showed up on the list. Angel Beats, though lacking in overall development, does have a very entertaining cast. Bonus points for the waifu. Even Planetarian had a very solid cast. despite literally only having 2 characters, one of whom doesn't even have a face. Or at least yet. But there is one key work that I think shines above the rest. Number 3 is Little Busters. Now, Little Busters might have a very large cast, but every single character does very well as either individuals or as part of the group. If anything, I would say Mio is the weak link, which is a little shocking coming from me considering my well-documented love for the Dandere archetype. Even so, everyone brings in a little something for the comedy as well as contributing well to the show's drama, whether it be during their individual arcs or during the main body of a fray. One of my favorite things about Little Busters, and I think you'd be able to guess what it is by now, is the bond that they share. No matter the situation, they would always be there for one another. Hell, a good handful of them have gone to great lengths in order to help others in the group. Honestly, if you didn't know any better, you would think they would have known each other for years. Well, actually, good few of them actually did, but you know where I'm going with that. Even with all this praise, Little Busters only makes number 3. But still, it's number 3. And considering what its competition is, that's still pretty impressive. This next series has a story that I can only describe as obnoxiously over the top, but is more subtle than people give it credit for. And while these characters aren't quite as over the top as its story or those of its spiritual successor, they do have more subtleties than I would first seen. Number 2 is Gurren Lagann. Now, right off the bat, I'll say that this is, without doubt, a near perfect cast. Well, yes, I said that about Toradora as well, but this is not just the main characters, but the entire cast as a whole. The main cast is nothing less than amazing. These secondary characters contribute their fair share to the story. The side characters do not overstay their welcome, and even the villains, in the main and minor, have personalities and motivations that make them stand out from one another. Now, of all the characters worth singling out, and trust me, there are plenty, I think the one who deserves it the most is Kamada. And that has absolutely nothing to do with my personal bias towards him. Kamada is not only the most subtle character in Gurren Lagann, but easily one of the most subtle characters I've seen in anime, period. Well, yes, he's loud and overly confident to the point of being cocky, but he's also shown a lot of restraint at times, as well as having a lot of compassion towards what he does, especially towards Sima. To this day, Gurren Lagann is the only anime that I've reviewed that I've given it a perfect 10 for its characters, a score which I still stand by to this day. For that, it more than deserves a spot on this list, but it just misses out on the number 1 spot. And what denied it the number 1 spot might just surprise you. The top spot goes to a series which is by no means perfect, but is one that I went with for very personal reasons. Number 1 is Fairy Tail. So why did I choose Fairy Tail over a series like Gurren Lagann or Steins Gate? Well, there are several reasons for that. First, I found nearly every character to be likable in their own way. Second, many of the characters carry some form of emotional baggage involving their past. Third, the villains are numerous with various personalities, abilities, and motivations. Fourth, final, and most important to me, is the bond that the members of Fairy Tail share with one another. You see, everyone treats each other like family, partially because many of the members don't have any real family to speak of. It's because of this bond that they are willing to stand up for one another and even put their lives on the line to help one of their own. If all that doesn't explain why I love these characters, let's put it this way. The characters are the main reason why I continue to watch Fairy Tail for a total of 277 episodes between 2 series, rewatching 175 of them to keep up with the ongoing English dub, 5 OVA episodes, and a feature-length movie. To put that into perspective, the next longest running anime that I've seen is Fullmetal Alchemist, which has only 115 episodes between its 2 adaptations, as well as having 2 movies, only one of which I've seen. I still haven't seen Conquer Shambhala, but that's not important. What is important, however, is that I love the characters in Fairy Tail. And that's why Fairy Tail has my all-time favorite character cast in anime. So, go ahead and tell me down in the comments some of your favorite character cast in anime and some of your thoughts on the entries I listed here. With this, I hope I can get more content out to you guys at a more reasonable rate. But, until then, this is the real Black Otaku setting out. See ya.